Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Inside Spurs channel. Hope you have enjoyed your Wednesday day, whatever you have done. I know that there was a little bit of footy last night, watching Manchester United versus Palace. They've got some more on tonight. Some decent games on tonight, actually, surprisingly. I think Chelsea-Brighton being the main one there. But yeah, we're talking about Spurs, that's more important. And we've got some transfer updates, some really interesting ones, in and outs. And you'll see by the main guy on the thumbnail who I'm going to be talking about, a former Tottenham player, potentially coming back. But yeah, we'll talk about a couple of players out, a little bit of a update around some injuries as well. So quite a lot to get into, and I'm not gonna wait around. We're jumping straight in. Marcus Edwards. So Marcus Edwards, if you weren't aware, a few years back moved away to Vitória in Portugal. They then went through some financial issues and he ended up moving to Sporting Lisbon. Okay, so this came from O Jogo, which is a big publication in Portugal, who said that Tottenham are one of many European clubs in tracking Marcus Edwards. The club still retain a 35% stake in the player's rights and are therefore entitled to such percentage of any transfer fee that Sporting Lisbon receive. So basically, if you weren't aware, when we did let Marcus go the first time, we retained basically 50% of the future sell-on fee. We actually moved that 50% over, not from the sale when he went to Sporting Lisbon, to the sale that technically his next move would be, right? We had 50%, it then dropped to 35% because of the Pedro Porro deal, which I think we managed to save a few quid, kind of get things done the way we want to, installments-wise, because we gave 15% back to Sporting Lisbon. Now, I believe, if I'm correct in saying, his release clause is 52 million. So, look, we went from having 26 million on the money for if he was to move with 50% to 35%, which, off the top of my head, I think we're looking at around about 20 million. Something like that. Don't really care if I'm that wrong, guys. I can't lie, all right? But you get the idea. So we basically saved about 50, we basically gave back, a good 6 to 8 million, something like that, purely to make sure that we got the Pedro Porro deal done, right? Now, the fact that we are retaining an interest, and I think this is the key thing, we're retaining an interest. He would never have come back to Spurs if we still had like Nuno, or we're Conte, or Poch. Not Poch, sorry. Poch, actually, no, not Poch as well. Poch was the one that sold him. Or Mourinho, Nuno, Conte, because he's not a very physical player. He doesn't suit their rigid, quite at times negative football. He does require space to work in, attacking football. He does remind me a little bit of a Brian Hill as well, to be fair, in that regard. Left-footed, tricky, close control, quite quick. I mean, I was actually at the game last season in the Champions League at home where he did score against us. It was, to be fair, he played really well that day and I thought he was one of the better players on the pitch. But the fact we do retain interest doesn't shock me. He's a Tottenham boy. There's probably always a part of him that probably wants to come back and show that he can play at this level for us. And I think in this style of play that we're playing right now, he could absolutely do it. If he wanted to. We've seen him play up front for Sporting Lisbon, right wing, left wing, and offer you a few different dynamics. And I think that's why it would work. Now, look, if Ange, because Ange, as I said, I need to speak to these players. If he ends up speaking to him and goes, do you know what, I'm not too sure about him as a person, because this is what Ange is about. Ange is about, you can be a great player, but if your characteristics aren't there of a great person, they're not really interested, which I'm all for. You look at that squad right now, that squad seems to be so tight with one another that, whenever you've been to think of back to being at school, how you've got little cliques, little groups here and there. They might mingle here and there, but they're really segregated into their own groups. Last season you had like the Brazilians on their own, you had the South American, like Uruguay, Argentinians on their own, you had the English guys on their own, the English and Irish, obviously with Matt Doherty. Now you're getting James Maddison and Pedro Porro having a bit of a bromance online. It's like, what? That's mental. I would never have thought about that. And that's what this squad is all about now. And I think Ange is only going to bring in players that he wants to enhance that. Not just the football side, but also just the team ethos side. And so let's say if he was to be a guy that, he does speak to Ange. Ange goes, I really like him. He's a really personal guy. He's very well grounded. I think he's going to do amazing things. Then yeah, we'd probably go back in for him. But when we look at £52 million or 52 million euros, I'm not exactly sure which one it is, would you say it's worth it? I'd be interested to see what Bryan Gil does. I think Bryan Gil is a very key part of that. If Bryan Gil tears it up, then we don't really have the need for another winger, because look, you're going to have Manor Solomon and Bryan Gil. You have Kulusevski, Brennan Johnson. You have Sonny that can kind of get involved here and there. Even Richarlison at left wing. You've got a lot of options there. There wouldn't be as dire a need to get someone in like there would be a midfielder option potentially, or a defender option. I don't know. We'll keep an eye. But the reason why I mentioned those two is because we've got some updates around 2 players leaving potentially to the same club with a former manager of ours. And no, it's not Saudi Arabia. It's Roma with Jose. The amount of times I've saw comments on these just saying Jose from deep, basketball term basically. And it's first and foremost with Eric Dyer. And basically, Roma have got some injury issues. They've got some defensive issues. And they're looking in January to reinforce that situation in that area. And basically, they've looked at a 6-month loan deal. Well, they're looking at a 6-month loan deal for Eric Dyer towards the end of the summer. Which, to be honest, if it went well, I probably would see him going there and moving there. But the fact that Mourinho is already thinking about Dyer, and if we can kind of just go, look, he's not going to play for us. We want to see more of Ashley Phillips. We want to see more of the guys coming through the youth setup. We might even look to bring in a new centre-half in terms of January transfer window or even the summer. Let's move him on. Save some money on the wages, get a few quid out of it. Because you're not really going to get a transfer fee for the loan deal. But if you go, look, we don't want a loan fee, take his wages though. Roma would probably go, yeah, all right, we'll do that. Do it for 6 months. Not, what's the worst that's going to happen? He doesn't turn out well. Oh no, he's gone. What a shame. For us, okay, we save that squad spot. We get someone in that we want in, who is going to add more to us, who's going to give us, like I said, with the Perisic situation, if he's going to give you 2, 3, 4 years of ability and growth and potential, isn't that better than 6 months of someone that's not going to be here? He's not going to be here for the Ange regime. I want someone that is. I want someone that's going to grow with the Ange system. As the Ange system grows, I want people to grow with it. And I see, Phillips being one of those, but also maybe we bring in another young guy, maybe a left-sided centre back to, give Mickey van der Ven a little bit of a push for his money, And come next year when we might, like I said, we might be playing 2 or 3 times a year. You never know. We're going to need that depth. And I think if we can have that runway of 6 months leading into that new season, I think it's smart, if I'm honest. What's the point of having a guy that's not going to be around where a guy could be around? And you saw it with Kulusevski and Bentancur and Pedro Porro. If you give them 6 months, their progression speeds up. And then when it comes to that next season, they're really, really hitting the ground running. Look at Pedro Porro this year, hit the ground running. Look at Bentancur, smashed it, was probably one of our best players last year before the injury. Kulusevski had a difficult one because of injuries, but you look at this season, and he has been pretty decent. So it's something to take into account. But let's talk about the other one. And I spoke about how PierreEmerick Hoiberg was looking at new representatives basically ahead of January because he wants to move, right? And this came out from Il Romanista. So the last one, sorry, to let you know, was from Calcium Mercato, I forgot to say. This is from Il Romanista, who says that PierreEmerick Hoiberg does not want to sign a contract extension. I don't think he was getting one, to be honest, but hey. Roma are now closely following the situation at Spurs, as he is a player that Jose Mourinho admires a lot. The pair are said to have a special relationship. Now, with Pierre, I think there's definitely a player there. I've always said there's a player there, and I think he has the ability to be, a really great centre mid on his day. We've seen it at the Etihads where we won 3-2. Him and Bentancur were mega, right? But that's because you're sitting back, you're sitting into a quite rigid system, and he's going to win a few balls, he's going to intercept a few, that sort of thing. But you saw against Arsenal, when the pace is quite high and we're needing you to play forward and really get us up the pitch like Maddison does, he couldn't offer you that. He wouldn't be able to offer you what a Pape Matar does. And I think what Pape does really goes under the radar. Now, Bentancur can give you that. Bissouma would give you that. but Højbjerg wouldn't. Højbjerg would be a 6, and I don't see him being as dominant enough to hold a midfield on his own. I've seen Basuma do it. I think Bentancur can do it. I even think Skip could probably do it a little bit better than Højbjerg. I think Højbjerg is better as a mover of the midfield, you know, box-to-box style, as long as you're not asking him to create or score the opportunities, right? He has value. I would say in a more of a defensive midfield 3, has a lot of value. And this is not me saying he's a bad player. I'm not saying he's a bad player whatsoever. I think he has value. I think he's a good player. But for what we want of our midfield, to have more technically gifted players who, you know, want to take a few risks, who want to get on the ball, you know, create opportunities, score, and that sort of thing, he's not that. And I just think he doesn't suit Ange's system. And that's my God's honest opinion. I think you get money for him, though. I think you can get a few quids. And I think when you look at a Roma, you know, Atletico Madrid still might come in for him. There'll be teams in the Premier League, I think, that would probably knock on Spurs' door and see if they can get him. Fulham were one of those, for example. And if Fulham move off Paulinho, do they come back to the Højbjerg situation? There's going to be other teams in the Prem, I think, will show their faces this season through the middle parts of the season, where you can kind of see, they're going to be all right, they're going to be decent. If you slap a Højbjerg into there, maybe they go up another couple of places. Maybe they're sitting in mid-table. Maybe sitting just above mid-table. I think he has that ability to help that sort of team. But hey, I think the representation change, there is interest in him. I see him moving in January, but I see then midfield being an area that Spurs need to work on, because you'll have Bentancur back, but you've got the African Cup of Nations. You know, what happens if you get injuries? You might find that players, might be coming through the youth setup, might have to play a little bit more, but also Spurs might have to go out there and go and get another midfielder who's ready to play now, because you might lose one. You might lose 2. You might lose more than that. You never know. But let's speak about players that are coming back. Okay, so we've talked before about Bentancur and his situation with injury. He is stepping up his return to the first team, training a lot more. He's actually participating within training sessions. So it's not right this second he'll come back, but it's not as far away as you think. I probably would say we might see some game time out of him back end of next month, maybe early the month after, which, look, 4 or 5 weeks away. Give me a slice of Colo Bentancur. Oh. So, look, we'll see about him. But a bit of an update. Obviously, I told you around Brian Hill, back in training now. So another body that we can throw into that attacking area, which is always good. But then the next one, Ryan Sessegnon. So if you weren't aware, we might have potentially moved off of Ryan in this summer, but he actually had that injury that kind of kept him away from being moved. Because if you're going to fail a medical, it's quite hard to kind of partial and things, right? But he supposedly has returned to light training, so probably a bit of gym work, maybe a little bit of training like Bentancur in a way, where you're doing a little bit and then you're going off on your own to do a little bit more. I think Bentancur is he's pretty much losing the will to live, kind of doing it on his own. He wants to just get involved in the main training now, but it's that progression going up and up and up. And I guess, look, when you think of losing Perisic for so long, if you can get a few back, it eases that loss. But also, if you do get an injury, suspensions, things like that, you can plug and play. You've got enough players who, if you're going to be only working once a week, like I said, with this whole thing, we're not playing Europe, you're playing once a week, these players definitely can, I think, give you that plug and play situation where you might lose other players, you know? I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, drop a like on the video if you did. It helps with the algorithm. I very much appreciate it. In the comment section below, look, we've got the Marcus Edwards situation. Would you want him back or would you want him sold so you can get the money? You let me know on that. Obviously, we've got the situation around Dyer and Højbjerg to Roma. Are you happy with Jose coming in for him? Are you unhappy? Do you want to keep one? You let me know in the situation about that. And look, are you happy about some of these injuries and the fact they might be coming back to the table and they might be coming back into the squad again? I know you'll let me know, and I'm hoping to have a good conversation with you all. Subscribe to the channel if you are new and hit the bell notification for more. But anyway, guys, that's the end of the video, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care, guys.